My son was in the emergency room, and I texted my parents for help. "We're busy with Jessica," my mom replied. Then she insulted my son, calling him a burden. So I canceled their mortgage payments, their car loan, and every one of their credit cards. I stood in the corridor of the house where I grew up. My eyes scanned the framed pictures covering the wall. Jessica's graduation, her wedding day, the birth of her first child. In every photograph, my parents beamed with pride. Any trace of my own accomplishments was noticeably absent. A familiar tightness formed in my stomach. After 35 years, you'd think I wouldn't feel it anymore. From the kitchen, my mother's voice drifted toward me. "Amanda, is that you? Come give me a hand with these dishes." I paused. I hadn't come here to do dishes. I'd come to establish boundaries. Stepping into the kitchen, I found my mother, Patricia, arranging a platter of appetizers. Jessica's celebration, of course. My sister had just been promoted to department manager at a local bank. A position she secured through my father's connections. "Can you finish these while I go get ready?" She didn't wait for my reply, already wiping her hands on a towel. "Your father picked up the wrong crackers. Jessica prefers sesame, not plain." I nodded and took her spot at the counter. Same story, different occasion. My phone buzzed, a message from Linda Harper, my former sister-in-law. "Did you tell them yet?" I hadn't. "How do you tell your parents you're cutting them off financially after years of support? How do you explain that their only grandson, Caleb, completed a family tree assignment and didn't include them?" The front door slammed shut, heavy footsteps approached. "Amanda," my father, George, acknowledged, barely glancing my way. "Where's your mother?" "Jessica will be here in an hour." My chest tightened. "She's getting ready." He nodded once before disappearing into the living room without another word. I arranged the crackers, recalling the countless times I'd stood in this kitchen, yearning for approval that never came. My full scholarship to UCLA. My promotion to senior analyst. The birth of my son, Caleb. Nothing had ever been enough to shift their attention from Jessica. She'd always been their miracle child, the one they had after years of devastating miscarriages. The daughter they'd long given up hope on. I was just the trial run, the practice attempt. I'd spent my life trying to earn what she effortlessly received, their admiration, their attention, their pride. When Derek walked out on me for a coworker 3 years ago, I assumed my parents would step up. Their daughter, suddenly a single mother, surely needed support. Instead, they questioned if I'd been the reason for the marriage's failure. Had I focused too much on my career? Had I neglected my responsibilities as a wife? It wasn't them who offered a helping hand. It was Derek's parents, Linda and Paul Harper, no longer my in-laws, but still my real family. They picked Caleb up from school, kept him on weekends when my job required travel, showered him with love. Meanwhile, my own parents were too preoccupied. Until 6 months ago, when their attitude shifted. Suddenly, they called every week to ask about Caleb, invited us for Sunday dinners, offered to babysit. I wanted to believe it meant something. Maybe they'd finally realized what they'd missed all these years. Maybe they'd decided to be present as grandparents. Then Jessica's promotion happened, and everything became clear. They hadn't changed, they just needed money. My mother returned to the kitchen, wearing a new blouse, one I'd paid for. "Did you finish the appetizers? Jessica will be here any minute." I slid the tray in her direction. "We need to discuss something." Her face shifted, enthusiasm fading into apprehension. "About what? Can this wait until after the event?" It could, but it wouldn't. "I'm stopping all financial contributions," I stated, my voice steadier than I expected. Her face lost all color. "What financial contributions?" As if she had no idea. As if I hadn't been covering their car loan for half a decade. As if I hadn't paid for the roof replacement last summer, the property taxes, the vacation to Hawaii. Every single one of them. My hands trembled slightly, but I pressed them firmly against the counter. The car loan, the credit accounts, the home insurance, everything. She gawked at me, mouth opening and closing, searching for words. "Why would you do this? After all we've done for you?" A sharp, humorless chuckle escaped before I could hold it back. "Oh, and what exactly have you done for me? We raised you. We made sure you had food to eat. The bare minimum." She was taking credit for fulfilling basic parental duties. When Derek left, who actually supported me? When Caleb was sick and needed follow-up appointments, who stepped in? When I was promoted, who even acknowledged it? Not them. Never them. My father stepped into the doorway, brow furrowing. "What's going on here?" My mother turned toward him, her voice rising in indignation. "Amanda says she's cutting us off financially, after everything we've done for her." His face darkened. "Is this about that situation?" "We already explained." "It's about everything," I said, the words pouring out. Years of disappointment, neglect, and realization bursting free. It's about Caleb calling Linda grandma because she actually treats him like one. It's about you two skipping his birthday for Jessica's vacation home trip. It's about me needing emergency surgery and you refusing to pick up your own grandson because Jessica had a dinner. 3 weeks ago, I'd been rushed to the emergency room with appendicitis, barely conscious from the pain. My only coherent thought was Caleb, alone at after-school care, waiting for someone to pick him up. My parents had been my first call, of course. "We're at Jessica's promotion dinner," my mother had said, annoyance dripping from her tone. "Can't his father get him?" Derek was in Seattle with his new wife. I'd barely managed to explain through the haze of pain. "Well, we can't leave now, Jessica would be devastated." Then the final blow, "He's just so much work sometimes. A burden. My child, their grandson, an inconvenience." Linda, however, had answered immediately. She dropped everything, picked up Caleb, and stayed by my side in the hospital overnight. She rearranged waiting room chairs to form a makeshift bed for him to sleep. That was the moment I understood the difference between obligation and love, between blood and true family. My father's voice yanked me back to the present. "You're overreacting. We couldn't leave Jessica's dinner, you know how much it meant to her. More important than their grandson, left alone and frightened? More important than their daughter, rushed into surgery?" "I'm done," I said, my voice quiet but unwavering. "No more financial support. No more pretending. You don't get to use me when it benefits you and discard me when it doesn't." My mother's face crumpled, not with remorse but with calculation. "The car payment is due in a few days, and your father's medication. Jessica's new salary could cover it. Or they could dip into the retirement savings they'd been hoarding while I financed their lifestyle. Not my responsibility anymore." The front door swung open, and Jessica's cheerful voice rang out. "Mom, Dad, I brought champagne." That was my cue to leave. I grabbed my purse off the counter. "Amanda, wait," my mother's voice rose in desperation. "You can't do this to us." But I could, and I was. I walked past Jessica in the hallway, catching the flicker of confusion on her face. "Amanda? I didn't know you were coming to my celebration." I wasn't. I'd only come to withdraw my final emotional investment, the last traces of care for people who'd never truly seen me. "Congratulations on the promotion," I said, sincerity in my tone. Jessica's achievements had never been the issue. The problem was our parents' inability to acknowledge both their daughters. A flicker of uncertainty crossed her expression. "Appreciated. Are you heading out already?" I gave a brief nod, unwilling to rely on my voice further. Let them provide explanations. Let them face the aftermath of their choices. The drive home felt surreal, like drifting through a haze. Tears welled up, but they weren't from sorrow, they were from relief. The weight I'd carried for years, constantly striving for love that should have been unconditional, had finally lifted. Caleb was at Linda's house. My former mother-in-law had sent pictures, him covered in baking flour, pure joy in his eyes. Happiness in every frame. Love, real and unfiltered. Family isn't about duty. It's not about shared blood. It's about the ones who stay, who make you feel accepted exactly as you are. 3 months passed, no calls, no manipulative messages, just silence. Then, on an ordinary Tuesday afternoon, my phone lit up with my mother's name. My finger hovered over the decline button, but curiosity won. I picked up. "Amanda," she said in a stiff tone, each word carefully chosen. "We need to talk about this situation." The situation meaning their financial struggles without my support. There's nothing left to discuss. A beat of silence, then her voice, laced with resentment. "Jessica refuses to help us, says we need to learn to handle our own expenses." The bitterness in her tone was impossible to miss. "The car got taken away yesterday. The mortgage is overdue by 2 months. Not my concern. Not anymore." "I'm sorry to hear that," I replied, and a small part of me truly was, the part conditioned to believe their comfort was my responsibility. "You can't just leave us like this. We're your parents." Biological connection, not emotional support. They'd never fulfilled the role of parents in the ways that counted. "I have to go, Caleb has soccer practice." "Amanda, don't." I ended the call and blocked the number. Across the kitchen, Caleb was focused on his school project, a family tree. "How's it going, kiddo?" I asked, leaning in. At the top, he'd drawn Linda and Paul, labeled Grandma and Grandpa. Below them, Mom and Dad, under my name and Derek's. At the bottom, himself. No Jessica, no maternal grandparents. Carefully, I asked, "Is this everyone in our family?" He nodded with certainty. "These are the ones who love us." Simple. Profound. True. That night, after Caleb drifted to sleep, I sat on the back porch with a glass of wine. A cool breeze brushed against my skin as I contemplated inheritance. Not wealth, not property, the emotional inheritance passed down through generations. The beliefs instilled about love, worth, relationships. My parents had inherited their own wounds, their flawed idea that love was earned, that children were indebted rather than cherished. But cycles don't have to repeat. Patterns can be rewritten. Caleb would inherit something different from me. The unshakable truth that love isn't a transaction, that family is chosen, that the most important thing is simply being there. My phone vibrated with a message from Linda. Paul's making his famous chili this Sunday, you and Caleb coming? A smile touched my lips as I typed back, wouldn't miss it. This was my legacy now, not guilt, not obligation, but choice. Connection. Love given freely, received wholeheartedly. For the first time in my life, I felt truly abundant in what held real significance. Looking back, I could see the pattern with absolute clarity. The relentless pursuit, the constant struggle, the desperate longing to be acknowledged. My sense of worth had always been measured through their validation, or the absence of it. Every milestone had been a silent plea, notice me, care about me, acknowledge me. The walls of my childhood room had been adorned with academic certificates, spelling bee awards, math competition trophies. All gathering dust while my parents attended Jessica's soccer matches, her dance performances, her unremarkable school ceremonies. When I was accepted into UCLA with a full scholarship, my father had scowled at the admission letter. California? That's too far away. And who's supposed to help your mother with the household? Not Jessica, never Jessica. She was too absorbed in being the focal point of their universe. I left anyway. I worked my way through graduate school, built a career in finance, reached a point where I didn't need anyone's help. Then I met Derek, charismatic, confident Derek, with his warm gaze and ability to make me feel like the most significant person in any setting. His family welcomed me instantly. Holiday gatherings where my thoughts mattered, weekend cookouts where my words were heard. His mother, Linda, called just to check in. His father, Paul, showed me how to change the oil in my car. It was unfamiliar, this effortless acceptance, this genuine interest in me. When we got married, my parents found reasons to complain about everything, the venue, the date, the menu. Jessica, my maid of honor, looked uninterested throughout the ceremony. My parents left early, citing Jessica's early morning appointment the next day. Derek's parents stayed until the end, helped with cleanup, embraced me as though I'd always belonged. Caleb's arrival should have changed everything. He was their first grandchild. But they visited once, briefly, staying less than an hour. My mother held him awkwardly before handing him back. He resembles Derek, she remarked, as if that justified her emotional distance. Linda and Paul, however, brought home-cooked meals, stayed overnight during those exhausting first weeks, held Caleb for hours so I could rest. Then Derek walked away. A text message, not even the decency of a face-to-face conversation. It was Linda who found me curled up on the bathroom floor, sobbing. Linda who packed an overnight bag for Caleb. Linda who took us into her home while I processed the wreckage of my marriage. My parents' response? A single phone call. My mother's tone carried something disturbingly close to satisfaction. Men don't appreciate women who prioritize their careers, I warned you. As if my ambition had been the problem. As if I deserved to be left behind. The divorce was brutal. Derek fought for financial assets but had no interest in custody. He craved freedom without responsibility. Linda and Paul were caught in the middle, torn between their love for their son and their disappointment in his choices. You're still family, Paul reassured me with unwavering certainty. That doesn't change. Caleb is our grandson, you're his mother, the equation is simple. Simple for them, incomprehensible for my own parents. As legal expenses piled up, as single motherhood, full-time employment, and court proceedings became overwhelming, I turned to my parents. I asked for help, just temporarily, until things stabilized. My father reluctantly wrote a small, begrudging check. Don't rely on this, we're not a financial institution. Yet when their car broke down the next month, they reached out immediately. Can you cover this, just this once, until we're back on track? That one time became countless times. Their demands multiplied, my boundaries faded. Deep down, I clung to a foolish hope that if I gave enough, sacrificed enough, they'd finally care about me the way they cared about Jessica. Pathetic, transparent, desperate, but I couldn't stop. Not until the crisis. Not until, he's such a burden. Not until I recognized the truth. It had never been love, it had always been an exchange. My financial support had been buying their temporary attention, never their affection, never their genuine care. That realization fractured something deep inside me. But in that fracture, I found release. I no longer needed to prove I was deserving of love. I already had it, from Caleb, from Linda and Paul, from friends who cared, from colleagues who respected me. From the family I'd formed, not the one I'd been born into. 1 week after leaving my parents' house, my phone rang. Jessica's name flashed across the screen, a rare occurrence. We spoke maybe twice a year, our exchanges polite but detached. "What did you say to Mom and Dad?" Her tone was sharp, defensive. "They're spiraling over money." I responded simply, "No more financial aid, no more enabling. They have their precious favorite, she can step up now." The silence on her end was deafening. "They think you're being cruel, that you're getting revenge for the past." Was it cruel to stop depleting myself for their benefit? Was it revenge to hold them accountable for years of emotional abandonment? "I'm not punishing anyone," I said. "I'm just done pretending." Jessica exhaled, a sound both weary and familiar. "They're never going to change, you know. They've always been like this." A rare admission between us, a shared understanding of the roles we'd been assigned before we had a choice. Her as the cherished one, me as the neglected. "I know they won't change," I replied, "but I have." Another pause, then, "Good for you." 2 simple words, but perhaps the most sincere thing she'd said to me in years. After we hung up, I thought about Jessica's reality. Did she feel the weight of their expectations in a different way? Did being the favored child come with its own invisible burdens? It didn't excuse how she'd contributed to my exclusion, but it offered insight into why. We'd both been cast in roles we never agreed to play. Now, months after severing financial ties, I was grasping what real freedom meant. Not just liberation from obligation, but liberation from seeking approval from people incapable of offering it. My worth had never been defined by their recognition. My value had never been tethered to their acceptance. I'd always been enough, they'd simply failed to see it. Caleb dashed into the kitchen, yanking me from my thoughts. "Mom, Grandma Linda says she's making spaghetti tonight, can we go now?" Grandma Linda, a title earned not by blood but by love, by presence, by a million small gestures of care. "Of course, buddy, grab your shoes." As he bolted toward the door, a deep sense of appreciation filled me. For this bright, resilient child. For the family we'd built from choice, not duty. For the wisdom that had emerged from hardship. Sometimes, the most valuable lessons come not from what we inherit, but from what we learn through pain. The drive to break cycles, to be better, to create something new. My parents had shown me exactly what kind of mother, what kind of human, I refused to become. And for that, strangely, I was thankful. As I drove toward Linda and Paul's house, with Caleb eagerly chatting beside me, I felt something settle into place. The journey from yearning for approval to finding peace, from seeking validation in others to discovering it within myself, had come full circle. The weight of legacy, the emotional debts, the ingrained patterns, the suffocating expectations, I'd carried them too long. But I'd finally let them go. What remained was lighter, purer, entirely mine. Family. Love. Belonging. Not transactions, not duties, not desperate attempts to prove I was worthy. But choice, intentional, deliberate, grounded in the quiet certainty that, at last, I was exactly where I was meant to be.